Welcome to Music. Today we are talking about the one and only Led Zeppelin, their history, musical style, and legacy of the influential rock band. We will dive deep into the band's formation, early years, rise to fame, hiatus from touring, and heartbreaking end.
All right, ready to dive in? We've got a big one today. Led Zeppelin.
Huge.
I mean, their music's everywhere, right?
Absolutely everywhere.
And we're not just gonna list their greatest hits.
Yeah.
This is different.
Right, we're going deeper, trying to understand what made them such a force. More than just, the famous riffs, the big albums.
Exactly, because everyone knows Stairway to Heaven, right?
Of course.
But there's this whole other story about how they became Led Zeppelin in the first place, and it's wild.
It almost didn't happen. Did you know that?
Oh, tell me they almost weren't Led Zeppelin. That would have been...
Well, imagine them as the lead balloon. Can you picture that?
The lead balloon. Seriously.
Yeah. It was on the table, a name practically jinxing them from the start. And the crazy part is they were kind of expected to fail.
But then they become, the biggest rock band ever? Something like that?
One of them, for sure.
So the Wikipedia page, it mentions the Yardbirds, another big name.
Huge in the 60s, yeah.
So what's the connection there?
Well, back in 68, the Yardbirds were kind of falling apart. Jimmy Page, he was already a guitar god. But the band, they had different ideas.
Some wanted to go softer, right?
Yeah, more acoustic, but Page wanted to ROCK.
Thank goodness for that. But this breakup is important because that's how the name the Yardbirds was free, right?
Sort of. Page, he got temporary permission to use it. They had gigs lined up, Scandinavia, I think, and they honored those. Like a tribute,
Smart move. Keep the momentum going.
Right.
But they still needed a band.
Exactly. And get this, their initial picks were completely different. Imagine Terry Reid singing, or Keith Moon on drums. Wild, right?
Hold on. Terry Reid, as in the Terry Reid.
The one and only.
Wow, that's a completely different band.
Totally. But we got Plant and Bonham instead, and it just clicked.
Plant, that voice. Bonham, basically a drum solo come to life. It's like they were destined or something.
Destiny, luck, who knows? But even with all that raw talent, they needed grounding. That's where John Paul Jones comes in.
The bass man. Wasn't he practically dragged to that first audition?
That's the story. His wife, she heard something special. Thank goodness she did. Because that first jam session...
Legendary. Under a record store, right?
Stuff of legends. They break into Trade to Rollin', and that's it. Led Zeppelin is born.
And then the record deal with Atlantic. Talk about a dream come true.
$143,000 in 68.
Yeah.
A king's ransom for a new band. But it wasn't just the money. It was the freedom. Atlantic gave them control over their music, their image. Unheard of back then.
And that changes everything, right? They weren't just making music, they were making the rules. And then 8 tours in 1 year.
8 tours. They practically lived on stage, which, by the way, is probably why their live shows were legendary.
It's true. You can hear it on those early albums. The energy, it's raw. It's like you're right there with them.
Absolutely. Take their debut album, pure, raw energy. You can hear them forging their sound right there in the studio.
It's like they bottled lightning in a studio.
Exactly. They had those blues roots, but with this incredible high-octane energy. And Bonham's drumming, forget about it. It's like he wasn't just keeping time, he was bending time to his will.
And Page's guitar. He was doing things with it that nobody had even thought of, like bending the sound itself.
Whole lot of love, that theremin sound. That's all Page, man. Pure genius.
What always gets me, though, is how intentional they were about the albums. Like, you had to listen to the whole thing.
Absolutely. And that was their doing.
Right.
Remember that control they had?
Yeah.
Everyone else was all about the singles. But Led Zeppelin, they said, nope, listen to the whole damn thing. Revolutionary, really.
And nowhere is that clearer than on Led Zeppelin 2. I mean, talk about cementing your legacy. Some say it practically created heavy metal.
Bold statement, but you know what? They might be right. That album was a game changer.
Totally. But then they switch it up again, right? Led Zeppelin the third, it goes in a completely different direction. Way more acoustic, folky even.
Talk about versatility. 1 minute they're blowing your mind with power. The next they're drawing you in with these acoustic landscapes.
And people freaked out a little, right? Like, this isn't the Zeppelin we know.
Well, change can be scary. But I think it shows how much they valued their own artistic vision. They weren't afraid to experiment, to push boundaries, even if it meant losing a few fans along the way.
Which, for the record, they didn't. Led Zeppelin the third topped the charts everywhere. But that artistic freedom, that massive success, it kind of fueled the other side of their story, didn't it? The myth, the legend, the rock and roll lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about the stuff legends are made of.
Exactly.
It's like trying to separate the music from the mayhem, you know?
Right. Their Wikipedia page, it mentions bits and pieces, but you get the sense there's a whole other story there.
Hotel rooms, trash TVs, the whole 9 yards.
And it's become this legend, right? Part of the mystique. But was it all true? Or is some of it like rock and roll exaggeration?
I mean, some of it's got to be exaggerated, right? But there's no denying they lived large.
Yeah.
Private jets, entire floors of hotels. It wasn't just music. It was a whole vibe.
Rock royalty. And that must have some kind of impact, wouldn't you say? On the music, on them personally.
Oh, absolutely. Look at how their look evolved.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page, he went from like bluesman in a turtleneck to the dragon suit wearing icon.
He was like a one-man fashion revolution. And Robert Plant, bare-chested, all that hair, unforgettable.
And that's part of what made them rock gods, right?
Yeah.
That whole image.
True, but it does make you wonder, is that image always a good thing? I mean, it can overshadow the music, can it? And it kind of reinforces this idea that rock and roll is all about like excess and
destruction. Yeah, there's a dark side to that image for sure.
Right. But we're here for the music, ultimately. And Led Zeppelin, they went way beyond just loud and crazy, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. They had that blues foundation, but they weren't afraid to experiment. You hear it on those later albums, especially folk, world music, even a little bit of like Celtic stuff in there.
Yeah. They really did have a huge range, and they blended it all so well. I mean, Kashmir, for example, that's not just a rock song, it's an epic.
Totally. It takes you on a journey. And that's what they were so good at creating, these sonic landscapes, drawing you in.
Speaking of which, we can't not talk about Stairway to Heaven. It's like the ultimate rock anthem. But why do you think it became so iconic?
It's more than just a song, isn't it? It's an experience. That slow build from acoustic to full-on rock and roll. It's like they crammed everything they were about into one song.
And it's on Led Zeppelin IV, right? Which is funny, because that album cover...
Talk about a mystery. No title, no band name, nothing.
It's like they were saying the music speaks for itself.
Which for them, it did. That album was huge, even without any of the usual hype.
It's true. They played with that a lot, didn't they? Like wanting to be mysterious, let the music speak, but also there were these larger-than-life figures.
A contradiction, almost. But hey, it worked for them.
Until it didn't. 1980, John Bonham.
Tragic. A loss for music, for sure.
And the band, they could have kept going, right? Got a new drummer? Plenty of bands do it.
But they didn't. They said, that's it, Led Zeppelin is done. And you got to respect that.
They knew Bonham was irreplaceable. And honestly, their legacy, it's massive, even without those extra few years. I mean, their Wikipedia page, it lists like 1 million bands they influenced.
Everyone from Metallica to, I don't know, Miley Cyrus probably sampled them at some point. Their sound, it just seeped into everything.
It's true. You hear them everywhere if you listen closely enough. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Like, they haven't made new music in decades, but they're still one of the most influential bands out there.
And that influence, it pops up in the craziest places.
It really makes you wonder where they would have gone next, you know, if things had been different.
Yeah. But even without those what ifs, they left behind a hell of a legacy. So here's a question for you and for all our listeners out there. Where do you hear Led Zeppelin today?
Oh, good one. It's like a game.
Right. Could be a guitar riff in a metal song, or
a drum beat, maybe, and something totally different, like, you know, hip hop or something.
Exactly. Their sound, it's woven into the fabric of music.
Yeah.
So pay attention. You might be surprised how often those echoes pop up.
It's like a musical treasure hunt.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's a great place to leave it for today.
Yeah, I think so too. Led Zeppelin, the music, the myth, the legend, it's all still out there waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely. Keep those ears open and you'll find it.
That's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Welcome to Music. Welcome to is dedicated to exploring new technology to create informative and entertaining media. If you would like to create a podcast like this, be sure to visit Google Notebook LM. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe for more. Leave a comment if you have an idea for an episode that we should start researching. Thank you for listening.